Greetings, my relatives. Welcome to another program, Eagle and Condor. This is Tony Gonzales, your host this evening. And today, my relatives, I'd like to talk about veterans. And I've invited a very special friend of mine whom I met in Vietnam in 1969, July of 69, myself as a veteran. And because, we commemorate, give tribute to veterans, such as we did here in the United States yesterday, Saturday, November 11th. And in that proclamation was to end all wars, my relatives, but wars have continued even as I speak. There's low intensity wars and conflicts, and there's some that could go into global proportions, if not kept to a minimum, and seeking solutions because, as you can probably tell, I'm a veteran against wars. I'm a veteran for peace. And my friend David Rodriguez, who I invited to come onto the show with us as a veteran himself, to share with us some of his life experiences, not so much, or perhaps even about the war itself, but as a draftee, what we were doing before. So David Rodriguez, in Vietnam, and his handle was the Rod. We called him the Rod. So sometimes I go Dave or the Rod. But David Rodriguez, welcome to the program. And tell us about yourself, living in Fresno. Were you born in Fresno?
Yes, Tony.
Okay. Yeah, as myself. Please.
Yeah, I was born in Fresno, but I was raised in Clovis. It's adjacent to Fresno. And I started off, I guess, picking peaches, plums, grapes, stuff like that.
Farm working background. Pretty much like myself. Please go ahead.
Then I started school, and I stayed in school in Fresno, in Clovis, until I was a sophomore in high school. As a junior, I went to McLean, and as a senior, I went to Roosevelt. Those are pretty good days. I used to play in a band called the Royal Knights, and we played at Bob's Big Rock and different venues, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun growing up. I consider myself at the time in Clovis middle class because my father had a relatively deep job. He worked in a winery, and most of my friends were working in the fields still. In any case, after high school, I received a notice, greetings. This is Uncle Sam. We want to send you to a faraway land. Anyway, at the time, I wasn't politically astute, and I didn't understand what the war was about or why I was going or where I was going. I always thought that, I'm the Rod. I won't go to Vietnam. I'm too smart. And then they said, well, you're going into infantry. I said, what? Sure enough, I was in the infantry. Anyway, I was drafted and went to Vietnam in 1968, and it was the worst year of my life. The first month wasn't that bad. I was on the 81 millimeter mortars for pulling security for the 9th Infantry Division big base camp. After that first month, returned Mobile Riverine Force, and that changed everything. When I first got there, it was strange because I wasn't used to the climate. There was a lot of humidity, and the smell was different. Everything was different. And to be honest, I was really, really scared. I went and spoke to a priest and everything and didn't get any real answers, but, I had to do what I had to do. In any case, from there, we went Mobile Riverine Force, and what we did is we stayed on the Navy ships, LST and Whitmore County and some of those other larger ships along the Mekong Delta. And we called ourselves river rats because we were on the river the whole time, and we were like rats. Be picked up by tango boat or choppers, and we'd go out into the field, look for some guy named Charles. Found out we couldn't find him because his name is Charlie. In any case, it was scary, really scary. I saw blood like I've never seen before. We went in with a group. They told me it was 250. Then they told me 35 of us came back. Not all were KIA, but a lot of them were. A lot of them were wounded and couldn't go back into the field. A lot of them transferred to different units.
David, if I may interject right here, how you had described the Vietnam theater, the Vietnam conflict, the Vietnam War. I think there was about over 2 million U.S. soldiers that had gone in there, and turned the casualties were very high, about 58 or more thousand. And people can see their names on the wall there in Washington, D.C. And there were a lot of Native American soldiers there, and people of all colors that were there in particular, including poor white people, that I had met myself in the platoon. So I'm trying to see if my relatives can get an idea of your sharing your experience, like a testimony of what it is. There's a macro of all veterans that feel some form of that, what you describe, even the strangeness of those that are finding themselves in another land, Please, I just wanted to give that.
Okay. I went to the wall in 1990, and it was awesome. It blew my mind. And where we were with in the time filled 2 full walls. And it's kind of hard to find my butt because in the field we went by nicknames. Some people didn't know my name was Rodriguez, and I didn't know some of theirs. And it wasn't by unit. The names were on the wall by, I guess, when they actually died. So I looked for some. I found a couple, and it was really, really devastating. I remember my first encounter. I was on the 81 millimeters, and we fired our guns, our mortars every night or evening. And one time, somebody gave us the wrong coordinates, and we hit our own guys. That blew my mind. That gave me a new perspective on, what did I do? What did we do? It was awful. It was really awful. All of us cried because, these are our brothers.
Did you find these brothers' names on the wall?
No, I didn't know who they were. It was a different unit. In any case, when we got in the field, we saw a lot of action. And we were in the field the whole time. And we would go out for 3 days and 3 nights by tangle boat or choppers. You get an air medal for every 25 flights into a hot LZ, hot loading zone. And I was almost to my 3rd one.
Your 3rd air medal?
Yeah. When we left, most of it through tangle boats because it was more immediate and all that. And I saw a lot of people die, a lot of good friends, close friends. There were like some, about 3 or 4 feet from me. I got shot. One good friend, special friend, and he got shot in the face and then in the back. I guess it blew him. And I hadn't communicated with him because I thought he was dead. And in any case, in 2005, I was admitted into the hospital for the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. And during that time, I received a package from him. So I went to the person in charge there and asked him if I should open it. He said, no, wait until it's time to talk about it, because we didn't talk about combat that much over there. And anyway, I ended up getting a hold of him. He's an artist, I found out, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Charles Bavier. And first thing we said, both of us, I thought you were dead. I thought you were dead, And, we chatted for a little bit, and I feel embarrassed about it because I was never able to recommunicate with him. I don't know why, because I remember carrying him back to an area where the choppers can come pick him up. And I was so tired, I felt embarrassed. But, as you know, do what you got to do. And for that, I felt very, very... The terrain was pretty much jungle and rice paddies. And a lot of times You don't know who got hit. If you don't hear any screaming when a grenade goes off or a booby trap, that's bad news. If you hear screaming, that's good news because you know at least they're alive. And it was really hard to take. Man, I heard a lot of screaming, thank God.
Well, getting through that, David, those experiences, kind of like fast forward during that time, the Ninth Division was pulling back. It was the first division during the Vietnam War to get pulled back to the mainland under Dick Nixon.
Yeah.
And that's where combat ceased for 9th Division. Well, certainly for me was June 13 of 1969. And our unit, as yours too, I guess, we all got moved into Dong Tam or there on the Mekong Delta with the Navy, right, during July and August. You want to tell us about that? And
tell you how I met Tony. In order to get into the big base camp, you have to wear a cap, a jungle cap. And on my hat, it said The Rod, Fresno Califas, Chicano Power. And a friend of mine wanted to go to town, but he couldn't find his hat. So I looked at mine. So he went to Dongtam, I went to the field. And I guess you guys spotted the cap and told him that this is where we sit. Tell him when he comes to town or when he gets up out of the field, come visit us. We're all from Fresno here. That was great. We've been partners ever since. And you're one of my best friends. You really, really, really were. And we spent a lot of time together, good and bad, some good, some bad.
Yeah, no, we certainly did. And from Vietnam, from the ships, we were in Hawaii. We were sent to Oahu, Schofield Barracks.
In Hawaii.
Tell us about that little short time we were there. And you had gotten ill, or you had...
in Nam, I had in the field a gallbladder attack. So they choppered me out of the field and sent me to the hospital there. And the doctors examined me. By then, blew over. And he said, "Oh, it's all in your head," and blah, blah, blah,
You just wanted to get out of the field or something.
Yeah. And I said, "No, man." So anyway, I went back into the field, and that happened 3 times. So finally, we got out of there. And when we got home, I went to the VA because I had another attack. And the VA in Fresno, and then they said the same thing. There's nothing wrong with me. I went to Castle Air Force Base, the same thing. And I went to Lemoore, same thing. Finally, my mother got angry and got involved, as mothers do, and she sent me to her doctor. On the first visit, he told me my gallbladder needs to be removed because that's what the problem is. Well, he said there's 2 options. One, you could have it done here in Fresno, or you can go to Hawaii and have it done over there. Duh. I ended up going to Hawaii, and I was in the hospital for a little over 2 months. I almost died because the doctors there weren't like the doctors now. The treatment there was different also. That was really upsetting because, we were all there for the same thing, and they almost killed me. In any case, I made it.
There at that hospital, I just want to share a little with our listeners and viewers. And the time that I knew you there in the hospital, my friend, my compadre, David Gomez and I, he wasn't my compadre yet, but David Gomez and I, another friend from Fresno, we went to the hospital and we thought you were good enough to leave the hospital. And so we helped you put on some civilian clothes and we went into Honolulu. Yeah. And we had a good time, brought you back as safe as can be.
By the way.
That was quite
an experience. Hurting, at the same time, I was happy.
I mentioned David Gomez's name He's still alive, bless him, and living in Fresno. And when we came back, he baptized my daughter, who was born there in Vietnam while I was there on our last mission on June the 13th. But I wanted to let the people know that there's a song that you were a part of in narration with the composer, guitarist, Al Reyes. You want to tell us about that song? It was 1982 and where it's at today.
I was going to City College. I only went about a year and a half to City College in
Fresno City College.
And I met Al Reyes there, and we became friends right away. He was very passionate and supportive of Vietnam vets, and he wanted to interview me for a song that he was putting together.
He had one in mind.
And one of the things was I read him some of the letters I had written to my brother and my mother and the family. And I recited one letter on the song, and I had a few words to say in between. And at the end, of course, it was over. I was home at last from Vietnam. In any case, everybody liked it. And right now, it's in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. And so good it was. They did the film Vietnam Veterano. That won the Associated Press Best Documentary for 1982, and it got accolades for editing and sound and for different things, different awards. I'm very proud of it,
And it's a tribute to Chicanos who lost their lives, who wasted their lives there in Vietnam, of which there was 20,000, a substantial percentage of the overall U.S. casualties in Vietnam. That's why the song is so worthy. And David, continuing with that, I encourage the people to tune in on that song, but not Chicano Veterano. What's it called, the song?
Vietnam Veterano.
Vietnam Veterano. Yeah. And then, David, we're talking about the early 80s now when the song was finished, and then a video was made of Chicano Vietnam Veteranos. Do you want to tell us about that video that you're in? Because I hadn't mentioned it yet to the viewers, but we'll be screening this video after today's interview with yourself. But please tell us about the making of that video.
Well,
very deep.
Silvia Astorga was a reporter for Channel 24, and she heard the song and she put together a script and everything. That's what won the Associated Press Best Documentary for 1982. She was pretty good. She married a Vietnam vet, a Marine, unfortunately, but well, he's a good guy. In any case, it was very successful. He's working on another song now. It's been some time, he's working. But what I wanted to say at first is what I did after I got out of Vietnam. I said to myself, if I'm going to put my ass on the line, it's going to be for something I believe in. And I've been in the war on poverty ever since. My first official job was with Fresno County Community Action, and we organized 10 chapters of the Chicano PTA in different cities around Fresno, and you worked with me on that, and that was not only fun, but it was worthy of our time, because what it did is what we were educating people that didn't know what to do with their children because they were getting into drugs and fights and stuff. And so they didn't know the education system or how to deal with it. And so we put together different scenarios, and we were very successful with that. As a matter of fact, it was with that group that we started the free breakfast program in Fresno. I was reading the Fresno Bee, and I read an article out of New York about the breakfast program. So I met a good friend, Luis Carrillo. I don't know if you remember him.
Yes,
He
I
was with
do.
the Department of Justice, and he let me use his phone for different contacts and stuff. So I called him, and they said, "Oh, right, that'd be great to have it in California." And they he sent me a book. It's called "If I Had Eggs, I Could Have Ham and Eggs." If I had eggs, and that basically laid out the foundation for the breakfast program. We tried it out. I got a committee together and tried it out in Fresno, and on a temporary basis to see how it would work. It was very, very successful, and they have it now in every school.
No, this time period was around 1972, 73, and I'm recalling that time period as well when that was on the move. I just wanted to let our viewers, listeners know about yourself, that that job you're describing was your first intro into the community and working for the community under the EOC or the community action programs. And of that time, we're talking early 70s now, both of us having been discharged, and I was having difficulty myself finding good work. And I just want to let the public know right now with you, David, as my brother you are, and that you're the one that brought me in, gave me that, you extended that hand, and you brought me into the community. It was something I was totally unaware of, you know. Otherwise, I guess I would be considered a part of the lumpen element or something, but I wasn't that aware, and you helped bring me to my senses. You know, fast forward where I am today, but I just wanted to thank you for that moment. Bringing that breakfast program.
Yeah, it's fit for you. You were good at it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yourself, if I may say, I think the Fresno El Concilio, I don't know if it's still functioning, El Concilio de Fresno helped in that also tremendously from what I recall.
In any case, what I forgot to say was, in getting into, there's some reasons I wanted to get into the movement. There's three major things I learned in talking to people, other vets, and their experiences and stuff. And a lot of them, most of them, had good jobs in Vietnam. And there's some things that I learned because I don't have an education, but a year and a half of city college. But I learned that I don't have to prove myself to no man. I proved myself to me. Not afraid to make decisions. I was a platoon leader for the last month or two, and I know I'm not an animal. There was one time when I shot a Viet Cong, and he was on the ground, and I kicked his weapon away. And the lieutenant told me to waste him. I said, I can't waste him. He's not a threat to us anymore. I'm telling you, Rodriguez, you waste him. I said, no. He said, look, he's almost dying and blah, blah, blah. And that whole time, I was looking right into his eyes and he was looking right into mine. That's when I knew. That's when it hit me that he's a human being, a brother just like me. You know, he has family and everything. I'm sure he didn't want to be in there either. To make a long story short, he got choppered away and gave a lot of information. On the other hand, there was a time I was in the field, and in the jungle there, they had a lot of dikes, you know, separating the parts of the jungle. And in the distance, I saw a Viet Cong, and he pointed his rifle at us, and I got mine ready, and I was going to shoot him. And the lieutenant said, don't. And I stopped, and I didn't. And the Viet Cong took off. Anyway, a while later, about maybe 15 minutes or so, we got ambushed. And I'm sure it was because of him. He knew we were coming, he knew we were there, he knew where we were at. And I lost 5 buddies. And I feel so guilty about it because I know I should have done what I knew I should have done. We had to spend a year in the field. Officers only had to spend 3 months. Most of them spent a month or less. All they wanted were their combat infantry badge to make their uniforms look good and make rank. But in terms of leading, we didn't have the proper training. We were trained for a different type of fighting. They never had any jungle there or anything for us to practice on or anything. But I still have bad feelings about that because I should have shot him. I should have. But in any case, that's part of history.
Yeah, and times you have to make some choices,
Yeah.
and go
Yeah.
on. And sometimes a snake can come back and bite
Yeah.
you. But David, you said you have little education.
Yeah.
A year and a half of city college, myself included. I got my degree there at City College, 2 years of college. That's all I have. And yourself as well, you're a self-made person, principled, determined, reliable, trustworthy. I mean, tell us a little bit about your work in depth with the farm worker community and your work with the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. I recall even during that time you helped write up the regulations, some of the regulations that were so important that weren't yet done.
I got
Please.
drafted again in 75. I was on reserve. After reserve, I came back home and I got a phone call from an attorney in Sacramento that they asked me if I wanted to work for the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. I said, sure, but I don't have a degree. They said, we didn't ask you that. I said, where do I sign? And they said, well, if you want the job, you have to come for an interview tomorrow. I said, my pickup won't make it halfway, and I don't have any money. So they told me to borrow a couple $100, which I did for my brother. And 2 guys came from EDD to transport me to Sacramento. They were going for the same interview. I sat in the back seat and listened to them the whole time, how they were going to get the job and all of that. They had background education. And fortunately, I got the job and they didn't. Another 3 or 4 days later, I was in Sacramento training for the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. One of the first unfair labor practice charges against E&J Gallo in 75. And I don't know if you know Hugo Morales.
Yes. Radio Bilingüe in Fresno.
Yeah, he's the director. And in any case, when we worked together at the ALRB when it first started, right after he got out of Harvard Law School. And brilliant. I mean, I learned so much from him. It was amazing. In any case, we kicked butt. And I handled a lot of election for farm workers for unfair labor practice charges pertaining to collective bargaining. And I was in charge of all the elections in the Coachella Valley during the peak season. A lot of elections in Salinas and in the Imperial Valley. In Imperial Valley, there was one Royal Packing company. They wanted their employees to reject the union. So they had the union already, and they wanted to recall it. And that was kind of put me on a spot because I know what the union meant and everything, and I believe in it. But at the same time, the farm workers, they work there, and it's their decision. We got a big riot going on, and so bad, I had to have a bodyguard for 2 weeks. And they want their, even though the general counsel was with me in the car, we were going to a pre-election conference, trying to flip it over and prevent me from making that decision. And they wrote me a good letter about that, the most volatile election ever in the ALRB. Anyway, before I got out of the ALRB, they asked if I wanted to write the elections manual, which I agreed to do. They really did. So they sent me to Sacramento for 9 months. I put it together and went to the National Labor Relations Board and other agencies and got an idea as to how it should lay out and everything. And I wrote it, and they use it today.
They use it today from the California State Department, right? And there you are, the man that you are, the college that you had, and your commitment to do that. That's quite an achievement, David, in itself. And then you moved on from the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. You worked in another department, housing, or where was that?
With the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. I worked there for 25 years. And that was like music to my ears. There I investigated discrimination and employment on the basis of race, color, ancestry, sex, physical disability, mental disability, pregnancy, sexual harassment, the whole bit. And I loved it. I loved kicking ass. And I went toe to toe with some of the best attorneys in the state, in the nation. There's one case I worked on against Disneyland. This is one. But this lady, about 52 years old or so, came to me and said that she got hired with about 5 other guys, and they were maintenance workers. And they worked together, comrades, and they all got promoted or transferred to other jobs where they can learn more and be transferred more and have an opportunity for promotions. I went toe to toe with their attorneys and said, "What did you do before she got there?" "Oh, we just locked up the restrooms and the guys went in and cleaned them, the women's and men." I said, "And her?" "Well, she wasn't there." I said, "Well, why can't you do the same thing? She doesn't go clean the women's restroom while it's occupied, does she?" And no. To make a long story short, she got a promotion and they changed their policy. And I feel pretty good about that one because she was so humble and grateful. And There's one big major case that I had.
Uh-huh.
Two Chicanos came in that said that they were applying to a battalion. And while they were applying, they finally selected someone Caucasian. And these two guys never even got an interview. Yet the guy that got it didn't have education. He scored far lower on the written exam than they did. And I got all their records and reviewed them and all that and determined that these guys were right. They were legitimately refused promotion because of their ancestry. Well, one of the people that was on the interview panel for them, he was Japanese. In any case, I said, do you guys determine use any of their ancestry for any consideration? He said, oh, no, we don't. So what about notes and stuff to write? He said, no, we don't. Then I showed him a piece of paper that had his name on it. And it said, Chicano, Black, Asian. I said, where did I get this? Or what is this? He was so embarrassed, you should have seen his face. I said, well, that's just where I said, well, I got it. Others must have been able to access it as well. To make a long story short, the first Chicano battalion chiefs in the history of Riverside Fire Department. And for 2 years, all employees hired by the fire department had to go through me. They had to give me a form that has how many people applied, how many minorities, what was their race, and why they didn't get the position. And in the process, I found out that other departments use the same tactic. Oh, this guy that got hired said that he got hired to the affirmative action program. And, affirmative action means you open the hiring field wider so that people can apply from different areas. And still he got it. And found out that the decision maker, the actual decision maker, was the person in charge of that department. And he's the one that was the culprit. And come to find out that most of the departments in the city were that way. They had affirmative action plans and all that. And to make a long story short, they got on the list on my list. And they had to submit all supervisors that went for positions that were considered for positions of why they didn't get it, their background and stuff like that. And that was one of my success stories.
They're all success to me, David, and hearing you, you keep saying long story short because they're all good stories and they're long and you make them short, but these are part of you and who you are. And, you help a lot of people. Like I said, you help me, and that's a part of you. You've been a big help. The video that we're going to see after our talk here includes some individuals that we both know. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the people in the video? Like, is it Jose Torres, for example?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know him that well, but he was a pretty good friend. And there was quite a few people. Well, I was with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. there was a position that opened up to enforce the IRCA laws, this Immigration Reform and Control Act. And I was selected to run it for Southern California, San Diego to Bakersfield. And they gave us $1 million. And Los Angeles County Transportation gave us another $1 million. And so I put it together and picked our own office in Long Beach. I got to handpick my own staff, which was great, well diversified. And I trained them and everything. And it worked out so well that after we ran out of funds, they asked me to go to Washington, D.C. and meet with the Attorney General and explain to him how I went about doing what I did. I also organized 4 advisory committees, one in San Diego, one in Anaheim, or Orange County, one in LA, and one in Bakersfield. And they were all very active, involved in getting the job done. And what we did is we enforced this IRCA law, Immigration Reform and Control Act, and we reviewed all their affirmative action material and all their statistics. And that went very, very well. I felt very proud about that. And from there, I became a district administrator for the 1/3 of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles County, for the department. And I supervised attorneys many times. And most of my staff, 2 of them were law students or had graduated from law school. 3 of them had master's degrees, and the rest had BA. And I didn't even have an AA.
Yeah, I know, Dave. That's just remarkable, and for our listeners, viewers to know, that it's the corazon that moved you to do that, and doors open, opportunities that were there that you took advantage of to move the ball forward with your commitment, justice for people. And now, David, your retirement.
Well, the last case, I was on my way to investigate the police department in India. And on the way, I had a heart attack. Just so happened I was on the 91 freeway, and right across the road was the Kaiser Hospital. So they took me over there, and I said, it's time. I had my time. I couldn't work anymore. After 30 years with the state and everything else, I was married to my first wife for 30 years, and my son has a mental problem, right? The one and only. And when I came home to Fresno, I came like a broken person. I know about my accomplishments, but at the same time, I still wanted to do more. And unfortunately, you can only do what you do. And so I retired. And I was like a hermit. I got an apartment, and I didn't want to leave. I didn't even want to go see my folks or my brothers and sisters or friends. I just was ready to give up. Then along came my Rosita, my wife. We'd been married for 16 years. And the best years of my life. And that made everything worth it. We had a very, very good relationship. She was abused. Also, I'm married for 30 years. Anyway, she passed away last year. Now I got this big old house, and I'm there by myself with my son. I hate to give it up because we put a lot into it, but I'm contemplating getting into a home for old folks. Or they say it's pretty nice and has all the amenities that one would need. And I'm contemplating that, but I don't know until I get out of this facility that I'm in now. I'm in a rehabilitation center. I've been here for a little over 2 months. And as soon as I get out and can walk again, then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. What I want to do is look for somebody compatible and that I can trust to live with me. I'm willing to even pay everything, but I need someone to help me because I tend to fall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my son can do is pick me up. He can't do anything else. He's got a very, very short attention span, and he needs a lot of attention.
Well, David, it's been excellent talking with you and you sharing your life and experience and some of the ups and downs. And, I'm with you all the way, and I'm sure our listeners, our viewers have been following fantastic life story, self-made person like yourself and with the what college you did have, yet you were able to move mountains and move people and move a direction in a good way. David, you did good, man. And any words you want to share with veteranos everywhere from all the four colors, the four directions, Dave?
Well, brothers, and it's good to be alive, and the struggle continues. We got to do what we got to do, whether in battle or on the ground at home, and that's a battle in and of itself. And we can't give up. We got to stay in the right direction to make this a better place to live. So we're still fighting, but we're a little safer. We won't get shot anyway.
Oh, all right. Thank you, David, David Rodriguez, a good friend of mine there in Fresno, my relatives. And we brought you this program for this week to share stories about veterans everywhere. And myself as a veteran, I'm against all wars. And the consequences of war are passed on generations, the trauma of it all and the healing, my relatives. So we have to find ways to make peace with ourselves first of all, which is what we had to battle with coming back from Vietnam, is finding peace with ourselves. And it takes even a lifetime to achieve that, my relatives. But stay tuned to Eagle and Condor. Tell your friends about the Eagle and Condor show Sundays at 4 o'clock. And we'll try and bring you interviews and movies, videos, screens that we can bring to you, such as this. After David Rodriguez, now we're going to watch a video on Vietnam Veteranos and tune into the song in the background of that narration, produced, directed by Silvia Astorga, as David Rodriguez told us. And my relatives, just want to mention also that Leonard Peltier is still in prison, 48 years, a crime he did not commit. Call with the president at the White House at 202-456-1111, 202-456-1111. And my relatives in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and the greater Bay Area, tune in to KPFA Public Radio 94.1 FM. You can also go online at kpfa.org. And the radio station depends on you for its existence, and it's going on 75 years on the airwaves now. So if you want to make a donation, that's really appreciative. Also, I have a radio program there with KPFA on Wednesdays, rotating with a team of hosts, Janine Antoine, Eddie Madril, Morningstar Gali, and myself, Wednesdays at 7 to 8 p.m. Also tune in to KPFA 94.1 FM on Friday nights, La Onda Bajita. It's now into its almost 50 years on the airways, my relatives, La Onda Bajita. And within that 2-hour program from 8 o'clock to 10 p.m., I have a half-hour segment, or sometimes an hour segment of programming called Across Indian Land. So tune in to that as well. And so with all that said, and Veterans Day, my relatives, I want to thank you and stay tuned again. You've been watching Eagle and Condor.
Thank you, Tony. God bless you. You're doing a great job.
First of all, I couldn't get it implanted into my head that I was going. I said, me, the rod, the infantry, me, the rod in Vietnam. Well, what a trip. And then when I was there, the smell, when I first got out of the plane, the smell hit me before anything else. And I just had this eerie feeling like, I may never go back again. A couple more friends. We were on patrol and got ambushed. One of the guys was about 5 meters away from me. The bullet came about 3 inches from getting me. I was so scared they had us pinned down for 4.5 hours. I even ran out of ammunition. We killed 7 of them, they got 2. I can't stand it. We were pulling security for the Bob Hope show, so the people with the good office jobs could see him. Don't you dare say any of this to Mom, okay? If she only knew how many times I'd gotten shot at, she'd flip. You know, in a way, I can hardly wait to tell you my war stories. I can't wait to go home and not be scared.
David Rodriguez was only 20 when he was drafted into the service. That was back in 1968, when the country was involved in one of the most controversial wars in modern history. He grew up in a traditional Mexican-American family. He's one of 6 children, the oldest of 4 boys. Since a young age, David had it hammered into him that fighting for one's country was a good thing to do. When he was jetted to Vietnam, he took with him a rosary, and his parents promised that they would pray every day for his safe return. He served in the Army's 9th Infantry Division in the Mi Khai Delta area. They gave themselves nicknames: the Grunt, the River Rats, who after surviving 3 months in Vietnam, concluded they were immortals, surviving only in a twilight zone.
I was super scared. I wanted to talk to a priest. I wasn't sure what to do. I just had this ugly feeling that I would never see any of my family or friends or anybody again. I didn't think I was going to come back. It was just a lost feeling, I guess.
Jose Torres joined the Marine Corps in 1963. For him, the military was the only way out of poverty. He had wanted to go to college, but the family couldn't afford it. His father wanted him to bring in extra income for their 11-member family.
It was a personal conflict that I saw could not be resolved because my father just, at the time, could not see me going to college. It's something that hadn't been done in the family before. And my way of dealing with that was to go into the military.
When Pete Rodriguez graduated from high school, he didn't have a sense of where he was going. And so he and a bunch of his friends just got together and enlisted.
At the time, it was like a patriotic thing to do, you know. There was a war going on, and going to fight for our country, and we were all like a very gun-ho.
Fred Herrera had a different reason for wanting to join the Marine Corps. When he was 14 years old, he was told his older brother had been killed in Vietnam, and for 4 years he carried inside him a rage, an insatiable urge to find out for himself what or who had killed his older brother.
He was like not only my oldest brother, but he was probably my best friend at that time. And it's just that trying to tell a 14-year-old that, your brother was there doing something that was right, or what everybody's supposed to be saying is right. I got it in my head at that time that I had to find out for myself. So when I became of age, I enlisted, went into the Marine Corps with the intention of going to Vietnam.
Fred didn't tell his parents that he had enlisted in the Marines. When his father found out about it, he says he felt very agitated and very angry at himself for being so powerless.
Angry at myself, angry at anything and everything, because I had already lost a son there, and I had seen people here that lost their sons over there for nothing, because we had no business in Vietnam at all. He left before he was through school, and I didn't want him to go to Vietnam at all. As far as I was concerned, Vietnam was for the birds. My anger towards my own self was that there was helplessness, that I couldn't do nothing about it. I couldn't stop my boys from going in no way. Because after I lost my first son, there wouldn't have been another one of my boys in the service as far as I was concerned. I figured one was enough.
Some 2.9 million Americans served in Vietnam during the war era. A large proportion were young and came from a low socioeconomic background and were educationally disadvantaged. Most Americans supported the war effort prior to their involvement in Vietnam, and like in previous wars, parents were proud to see their sons in uniform.
When my first boy joined the Marines, I was very proud. To a certain extent, I was very proud because my boy had been able to join the Marines. I went ahead and told him that I felt that he was doing the right thing. I figured maybe in the Marines he could get some more education and better himself. But he died in Vietnam, so he didn't benefit.
Well, I really didn't think it was going to turn out like this. I really didn't, because we were sincere. We took care of business when we were there. And I saw a lot of guys die. And sometimes I wonder if,
Do you feel used?
Used and abused and not cared for.
You found yourself on a beach in the night with dudes from Texas, corridos you sang to get your mind off another patrol. Get your 16 ready, it's time to go. You crawled through jungles, steamy hot. You saw battles, your age get shot. Heard the cries, saw them die there. You come home with ugly nightmare. Que loco, Vietnam Veterano, Gonzales, Torres y Lascano, on the front lines again los Chicanos, Martínez, Garcia y Lujano.
The rationale for the Vietnam War was the defense of the South from the invading Viet Cong. Recruits left expecting to contain a belligerent group of communists they expected to win, but they arrived in Vietnam ignorant of both the conditions and the enemy. They found villagers who behaved like spectators to the war. They were surprised by the heat of the dry season that drained them of both strength and patience. The monsoon rains were equally relentless, causing many soldiers to withdraw into long periods of depression.
I remember my first mission. I actually sat on my steel pot because I saw some bugs that I'd never seen before in my life, and I was really scared. Then after a while, after being shot at a couple of times, that was removed real quick.
This is interesting, huh? They always told us, you gotta kill them because you don't know who your enemy is. But in reality, man, they were all our enemy, just because we were their enemy. We were fighting one people, one country, it wasn't the U.S. and the Southern Vietnamese against the Northern Vietnamese. And those were the realizations that brought me to really turning anti-war.
It was mounting opposition to the Vietnam War from both the civilian population and military personnel, lack of specific military strategies except for increasing the Viet Cong casualties, and the bloody atrocities that left soldiers with little or no sense of direction. And for many, the anxieties were compounded. They felt discrimination on the battlefield. They were made to feel like frontline guinea pigs.
It was compounded in a sense that it showed me that one of the reasons that I had gone into the military was to somehow fit into society like other Mexicanos had in previous wars. And because I thought it would be somewhat of an economic stabilizer.
We have always, I guess you could say, been, I don't want to say subservient for being such a harsh word, but something to that effect. We've always been made to feel as second-class citizens. And I think I was, really put out and upset with the fact that, okay, we can be second-class citizens here and get the second-class job, so to speak, and yet when it came time to do some dirty work like Vietnam, we were Johnny on the spot, and it's where they wanted us, and we were good enough for that. We were good enough to go over there and put our butts on the line.
We were perfect fodder for the guns, for the war machine. They could afford to lose us. We weren't producing. We would never produce the way society was going. We didn't have technical skills. We didn't have the advanced education to go into technological society. So we were good for the war machine. And that's exactly how they treated us.
One of the hard things about Vietnam is you have a tendency to get really tight and close with brothers, with the guys. And, they could be here today and gone tomorrow. And we lost a lot of guys. I don't care what anybody says, we got our butts kicked.
In July, you were fighting away with a raza on the street in L.A. They said this country ships us off to fight, to return and deny us our right. So Chicanos fought and Chicanos died. Spirits of Aztec warriors at their side. Fight fiercely, what else could we do? Just like we did in World War II. Que loco, Vietnam Veterano, Jose, Luis y Chano. on the front line again, los Chicanos. Martinez, Garcia, y Lujano.
Americans have always been good at homecoming ceremonies. In wars past, when Johnny came marching home, he could expect cheers and bands. He could look forward to gratitude which in turn helped him readjust into society and gave him a feeling that his sacrifices abroad had meant something. But for the returning Vietnam veterans, the homecoming was far less glorious.
Not even a greeting. They received a greeting that was from their own family. Where these prisoners that they had in Iran, they come home to a big thing. They were all presented with gifts. They were all big heroes. For what? They stayed prisoners. They didn't fight for a country.
What Vietnam veterans had returned to was a very hostile society. Many veterans experienced being spat at, ridiculed when they were in uniform. They were called baby killers. They were made to feel foolish and confused. And to add to their frustrations, many found that their military training was worthless when it came time to finding a job.
We got out of service broke. We needed jobs. We had to find jobs. And we were still working. To take time to go to school, it takes money. Although the government was going to give us a little bit, it wasn't enough. We still had to provide for our families because of our socio-economical background. We had, I think, a little more difficulty.
What skills could we have if the only skill they taught us in there was how to kill? So we come out here and we want to get a job, and they ask for skills, you got none. They ask for education, we have none.
What's even a bigger slap in the face now is that they have this new system out called a certified nursing assistant, which some of us with 11 years of medical training, I mean advanced medical training, running emergency rooms and so on and so forth, we can't even go up and take that test without some kind of classroom training, formal civilian classroom training.
David Rodriguez was also very disappointed in the medical treatment he received at the Veterans Administration.
I came out of service 100% disabled, and I couldn't work or do anything for over a year. I mean, for about 6 months that I couldn't do anything. And I ended up in the Veterans Hospital for a month after that. It took me over a year to fight for my money, and that hurt. I was exposed to Agent Orange. You know, we lost 3 babies. I get reoccurring rashes, get a lot of the symptoms of the ramifications of Agent Orange. I went to the VA hospital to seek help, and they made me feel so rotten. I have so much resentment for them.
Well, that's the only thing I was very against, that they sent him home with his operation still open and all infected. And he was turning yellow. So I called some of my lady friends that work at Community Hospital, and then I told them about it, and so we put him in the Veterans Hospital. And he was critical there for a long time. He was real sick. That's the only thing that made me so bitter about him being out there.
Despite all the pain and suffering David had to endure, Rose and Henry Rodriguez say they were still very proud to see their son in uniform. And yet the mood of the country was becoming increasingly anti-war. It was fueled by the returning veterans themselves, who found it difficult to reconcile years of cultural and traditional upbringing with what they had been forced to do in Vietnam. When they asked for understanding and compassion, the public was just not ready to listen or understand.
For 18 years, I grew up, Mom and Dad taught me right from wrong and so on and so forth, and like a lot of other guys, we're taught the same thing. We turn around, we have to go to Vietnam, and we did do everything that was against all of our training. You know, so it was a confusing time. It was a lost time, really.
There's more to a war than just the combat. The combat is only one aspect of what a person goes through in a war situation. Yeah.
Are you home now, Jose?
Am I home now? Yeah. I am. You caught me off guard. Yes, I am.
You soon found out they didn't care about what you went through over there. Don't ask, 'cause not much you'll get. This war is what they'd rather forget. Que loco, Vietnam, Veterano. The scars are still on you. Do you still hear the helicopter sound? Don't let them put you down.
In the summer of 1981, after the release of 52 American hostages in Iran, the Vietnam War reemerged as an item of profound and psychological unfinished business. 6 years had passed since the last American troops had been evacuated from Saigon. The majority of those who returned had managed to put their lives back together again. But nearly 100,000 veterans came back with severe physical disabilities, some without arms and legs. Another 50,000 fear they may have cancer from the herbicide Agent Orange. But it has been said that the real devils of war work in the mind. Almost a quarter of those who served in Vietnam are still suffering from psychological problems, flashbacks, nightmares, and depression. And so, like Pete Rodriguez, they come here to the Vet Center. Some 92 vet centers are now operating across the country. Mike Miracle, director and counselor, says they are providing a real homecoming.
By that I mean that we're enabling vets to come into a place, we're setting an atmosphere whereby they can talk about things, problems that have been issues and problems for them for a good number of years. They're able to come together in a group of other Vietnam veterans, and they feel comfortable in opening up.
Counselors at the center say many veterans have conveyed to them the fear that they were going crazy. But after undergoing a series of talk sessions, they discover others are also suffering from the same anxieties and depressions.
Whether it's a nightmare, whether it's a flashback, whether it's going through a relationship, 2 or 3 marriages, a drinking problem, whatever it may be, they can uniquely relate to that, often to their Vietnam experience.
The group sessions are conducted in a very relaxed atmosphere. There's a feeling of warmth and camaraderie in the room. They joke, laugh, and listen to each other's war stories.
One thing that amazed me, though, was that Westmoreland was there. I mean, I could not believe the picture that I saw of that old fella out there marching in the parade. You know,
he's a Vietnam veteran.
I know he is. Believe me, I'm painfully aware of that.
I feel like the press that there was for what happened in Washington last week was the first time we've had anything that even approached good press. I feel like, you know, for the last 15 years, we've had the lousiest damn pressers there could ever been. You know, you get this Vietnam veteran going off the brink doing this, taking hostages, killing people, you know, or mining one place or another, or the guy's a pill freak, or he's a dope addict, or he's a sex maniac, or he's a baby raper, or, you know, he's this and that and the other thing. He's anything but a Vietnam veteran. He's just been a monster up until last week. And then they say, oh, good boy, you know, pat you on the back. Good job, yeah, let me shake your hand, you know, you're a hero. Well, you've been a bastard for 15 years, you don't turn into a hero overnight. That's the way I feel.
For many, the war had the effect of lost time, precious time. Don Passano feels like a misfit. He says the time frame when his life should have been devoted to preparing for a career and developing strong family ties and friends was lost to the war effort.
I have 2 children, and I don't feel like a father. I was married and I never felt like a husband. I really haven't been able to feel much, right now, even in relationships. My relationship pattern is bad because I really can't feel. I always keep thinking I'm going to find somebody that I could really have a feeling for, and I found a lady I'm with, or am still dating once in a while, but I can't handle relationships. I don't know how to fit into them. You know, I'm either overbearing and outgoing, you know, and screwing it up that way, or I just don't care. You know, trying to get something out of it. I'm always trying to see something in it, and it's not there. And it's my whole lifestyle is that way.
Veterans are also discovering that episodes that caused them anguish in the past can actually make them laugh today.
What's the point? There's, you know...
picking a fight.
What's the point in picking a fight?
Yeah.
There is no point.
There is no point.
That's the whole thing. When I would walk into a bar with my uniform on, I don't know. Everybody tended to feel like, you know, I was something to take it out on.
That was the catalyst.
Right.
Yes, sir, please. Thank you.
And that's, you know, that was the reason I quit wearing my uniform when I was still attached. And then after I was attached, I took it all out into the garbage can, and everything that I could find that connected me to the military, I stuffed in the garbage can. And the only reason I've got anything left, including my DD-214, was because my dad went out and pulled it all out of the garbage can. But I was through with it, boy. I was done with it, and I talked about it for, I don't know, maybe a month. And after I got stuffed so many times, I quit talking about it. I just didn't want to have nothing to do with it.
The 92 outreach centers across the country are helping thousands of Vietnam veterans like these men to readjust into society, to develop a new perspective about themselves, the war, and the unfriendly civilians they had to cope with for so many years. But for the families and friends of the 57,939 men who died in Vietnam, the trauma continues. It's like an open wound that won't heal, and the hurt and the resentment will continue for a very long time. This is Silvia Astorga reporting.
I'm still proud to be an American, Mexican-American, and I just hope to God that nothing like this ever happens again. You know, I got a son, Joseph, you know, the day may come when he may have to do something similar to that, and I just hope to God that this nation learns from its mistakes, and I consider Vietnam a big mistake.
These politicians, they have the money, they can keep their children out of the front lines, but I say this, that if the politicians, and I mean all of them, if they would get up there on the front lines, these wars would stop damn quick. It's been a long time since my son was killed, but I'm still resentful of it. And I'll be for the rest of my life, I guess. And I don't think there's much more I can tell you.
I got off the taxi about 2 blocks from my mother's house. It was a long walk home. 2 blocks seemed like forever though, because it was like I was in a daze, like it wasn't really happening. It was finally coming true that I was home. I didn't knock or anything, I just walked in. I believe my mother was talking to my grandmother on the phone. She just screamed, and what I saw, and it was very emotional. There was a lot of crying and carrying on. I was just glad to be home and just glad to see my mother and everybody. I didn't think I was going to see them again. Yeah, I was back from Vietnam finally.